Okay. Hello. I think we're live here. Oh, there we go. That was a weird place to start. Okay. Anyway, hi. Welcome to this week's History Chats. This is Ben Clark, and I'm going to be talking about Louise Elster in Elster in just a little bit. But as always, we're going to leave the door open for people to join us for a little bit, a couple minutes here. So if you're joining us live, welcome. We're going to get started at 12:30. And if you are joining us after the fact and watching the video later, yeah, just kind of skip ahead a couple minutes if you want to, and that'll get you to the program. But for everybody that is joining us live, nobody yet, but that's, oh, there we go. Cool. Somebody's watching. Great. That's all I need. Yeah, we're going to get started in just a little bit here. Oh, yeah, that's right. You have the audio on, so you could probably hear that bit. Oh, well, that's fine. I'm excited to talk about Louise a little bit this afternoon. Very interesting person. It's part of our ongoing program this month on people you should know. So it's continuing to that theme once again. Just occurs to me I should probably include something at the end here. Don't worry about that. We'll come to that in a bit. Okay, while we're waiting, let me just take a moment to thank our sponsor, Yankee Bookstore, for sponsoring History Chats and History Speaks. For that allows us to do this. So big thanks to them. Speaking of History Speaks, this weekend, so in just 2 days now, if you're watching this on the day that we recorded it, we'll have our next History Speaks program. So unlike the History Chats, what we're doing right now, which is a quick, probably about 20-minute discussion about a subject, this gives we bring in an expert as part of the History Speaks series from the area, or from Wisconsin generally. But here, this is going to be Paul Whitaker, who is, I believe, still teaching at the university, UW Stevens Point at Wausau. I could be wrong about that, so I apologize. I guess we'll have to find out for sure before Thursday or before Saturday. But yeah, he's going to be talking about one of his areas of expertise, and he's going to be able to go into detail of the history and the development of apples and botany and cider to the area. So that'll be a great program if you're looking for something to do. It'll be at 2 p.m. on Saturday. And it, of course, like all of our programs, will be available later on our YouTube page, or I guess probably on Facebook too, if you want to dig for that. All right. Hi. Well, I think we're going to get started here. So, yeah, if you want at any point to drop some questions into the comment section, the chat section, feel free to do so. I'm for some reason don't have it up. I'll figure that out later. But I'll come back to that and watch. I won't be monitoring it live, but there'll be opportunity for that later on. So with that, I think we'll get started. Oh, gotta make sure I get the right sheet in my notebook here. All right. So today we are talking about Louise Elster, who was for most of her life, a fourth grade teacher, but a lot more than just a teacher here in Wausau. But that was kind of the main thing that people probably remember her from. So take those off. Yeah, she taught at from 19. Well, we'll get into this, but basically from 1926 until 1969. Mostly at the old Franklin School building, the elementary school in Wausau, and then she was for a while at Riverview. And so that's a long period of teaching and being involved. She's also, a musician and surprise film star. We'll talk about all of these things in due course. But first, let's just talk about her. So Louise Elster, this is her probably around when she's about 20 years old, about the time that she goes, maybe 18 to 20, some of that time that she is in, or just after graduating from the Teachers College. She was born in 1906 in Alexandria, Minnesota. That's where she grew up. At some point, I think, oh, and I should say this: she's born to Albert and Sarah Elster. This is her mother, Sarah. I'm pretty sure. Her father, though, passes away by or about 1920. I'm not entirely sure. I'm hedging my bets here. I wasn't able to really track that down specifically, but I know that he passes away, and they end up moving to River Falls, Wisconsin, and I think they had family there, which is the reason for that. And then she ends up, after graduating high school, she goes and goes to the normal school. There's a state normal college in River Falls, which is a little bit more of, we had a normal school here in Wausau, for example, that could, but if you wanted to teach high school level classes, you would need to get accredited at a state school. So you'd have to go like down to Stevens Point where they had one. And so they had one here in River Falls. Now, she didn't go to become a high school teacher. She just happened to be in River Falls, and that's why she went. So she did take the 2-year program, and she did graduate in I think 25, 26, probably spring of 26. And so this is the yearbook from her yearbook here. Can kind of see her interest. She's grammar, YWCA. She's going to be a lifetime member of a lot of, and involved in a lot of groups, church groups, women's groups, the Sons of Norway, ethnic groups, stuff like that. And then the orchestra, I think, is also very telling. This is the picture of the orchestra that year, and there she is. I think she played piano. She's listed here, but there's like a thing underneath where it like outlines, here's the violinists, here's our saxophonists, here's our trombonists, and such. And she's not listed there, and she's not holding an instrument. She, of course, was a pianist. Her mother taught piano lessons, so she learned at a very early age. Apparently, there's very improvisational is the way that she would do this. Apparently, when she was like very young, she would sit at the piano and watch people walk by the window on the street outside, and she would, play along to kind of, give some soundtrack to the people as they walk down the street and stuff like that. So definitely a gifted pianist. And I will say, even though she's playing piano here, she will eventually, and I don't know if at that point in time she already could play the violin, but she is going to become a violinist. And it's going to be a big part of her life. She plays as part of the Wausau Symphony Orchestra. In fact, this is probably the earliest picture of that group, around 1930s, is Jacob Ruder, who is said to have I don't think he put the group together. I think he's just the guy in charge. Some other people kind of said, hey, we'll pull everybody together. But whether or not he was the one who did it, he was the guy in charge. Back in 1898, he oversaw the first such, symphonic type group, which was called the Wausau Philharmonic Society. But by the 1930s, they started to change the name. Kind of went in and out depending on how popular it was. It wasn't super popular throughout the time. It was always kind of a small, dedicated group of people that played in it and would go to the concerts. But certainly something that existed throughout this period. And there is Louise Elster in the far right end here. So she was there in 1930. And I should say, one of the things to give you a little insight into how I chose Louise, it wasn't necessarily because she's a great story, although she definitely is. When I put these together, I always try to think, well, what do we have a good collection for? What do we have pictures? What do we have other stuff? And we have 3 boxes of materials from her, which is a lot. Her writings, her, photograph albums. There's a lot of stuff that I'm showing that will be from those. One of the interesting things is she had basically a box and a half, like banker box. So this is not an insignificant amount of stuff, of just like her day books. She wrote in a book or a journal every single day. Here's what I did today. Here's what I did today. And this gives a really interesting look really interesting look at what it was like to be a young single woman living in Wausau as a teacher in the 1920s and 30s and going forward. And one of the things that she talks about is she will often say, oh, there was a symphony rehearsal, nobody showed up except for the wee core few. or there was a performance, and it was very few, sparsely attended. Not always, but that was often something she said, especially at this point in time. But anyway, she's going to be involved in this group after it's sort of revived in the 40s and until I think probably the 70s. She was still playing. I don't think by 1980, I think she kind of ended that. But yeah. Anyway, after graduating the teaching college, she got a job at Franklin School in Wausau. This is the old Franklin, obviously not the current school named Franklin. Yeah, again, from her scrapbooks and photo albums, this is her classroom, at least in the late 20s. And here is the teachers at the school, of which you can tell, younger women. It's kind of an interesting period. Not to say this would be that maybe unusual if you took 10 years earlier, but certainly this is an era, the 1920s is a period in which, the expectations of women, or young women, they could work for a little while, maybe as a stenographer, secretary, or a teacher. At some point you got to settle down and have kids and, do that sort of route, or at least that was the expectation sometimes. But honestly, or kind of interestingly, a lot of them here. I don't know, that might be a miscategorization of this group of women, in which case I apologize for that. But it seems like that's kind of the feel here. And there's Louise. Anyway, and I guess the other thing is, these are her early friends in the area. She moved here really without much people here. So, she finds friends and very quickly gets involved in a lot of stuff through that. So as a teacher, I think what really hit me is, again, going through the day books, she often talks about her students like they're her friends, like they're her family. She'll say, Marjorie called on me to get, at dinner, and then she talks about giving them lessons, and it's just like, oh, that's not a friend, that's a fourth grader. And you can see, and again, in her scrapbooks, these are scrapbooks that were produced basically from the time that she arrived in 1926. Interestingly, around the time her mother died in 1939 is kind of when the scrapbooks that we have at least end. But you can see this is from the late 20s. This is before you had, it was common for you to take class pictures for elementary school kids. But she, wanted to remember their names and who they were and what they looked like. And so she, has pages and pages of just, these are my kids, my students. And then, some more of the other teachers here. So as I said, her mother Sarah does die in 1939. She had moved with Louise to Wausau and lived with her. And I think that there is, I don't know, she certainly traveled. She wasn't like shy about traveling, but certainly after her mother dies, her travels get a little bit more extensive. And specifically the trip to Scandinavia is interesting. Again, from the collection, this is actually here. Let me do this. Oop. There we go. A little bit bigger. This is just a scrapbook about this one trip in 1949. This was kind of important. She was very much a Scandinavian Norwegian roots, and so she went and visited the old world and put together a scrapbook with all of this stuff in it. So yeah, she traveled, and not just to Scandinavia. She traveled all over the place. And that was there you go. That was a big love of hers, is travel as well. There we go. She was also, one of her other loves, of course, besides music and travel, was writing. She was a great writer. She wrote a lot of articles and poems and all sorts of stuff. She, in those days, you would have like a school operetta that they'd put on, or like a play or something, and she was often, very much involved in that. And this is one book. This is the first book that she publishes in 1988, called Life in the Fourth Grade, and it's a great book. It has a lot of reminiscences about her life, her time as a teacher. Very humorous, and one of the things is she recounts stories that of kids interacting with her from the 1930s and 40s, and those stuck with her as something that was really important, and I think that kind of speaks to that. The other thing I wanted to do is use this as a way to transition, because this image that's on the front is kind of interesting because one of the things that, of course, she blended a lot of her passions together. Music was a big part of the way she taught. And this is from a series of pictures that were taken. There's at least 2 or 3 of them that I've come across of the classroom in this kind of setting at this point in time. But this one was published in, and I don't remember what the name of the journal was, but it was like a music teaching journal in which she explained her process. So she has that piano there. Now, that wasn't always in her room. She said piano day was Wednesday. At least this is like early 50s. On Wednesdays, she'd get some of the bigger boys to go out and wheel the piano from around the corridor in the hall into the classroom. And they would spend, maybe an hour or 2 playing music. And this was sort of, you can see how some of the students have their hands on the desk like they're playing. And that was the deal. Just to give you one of the examples, she goes through a lot of different ways that she does exercises and stuff. But one of them, for example, was she'd play a waltz. And she'd have the kids mimic along with it, left, right. A waltz is in 3, 1, 2, 3, 1, 2, 3. And usually it's a low note and then 2 high notes to kind of give that feel. Excuse me. And so as she would play the music, she'd have the kids go left, right, left, right. They're not, hitting specific notes. There's no like keys on their desk. But the idea wasn't necessarily that. It was to kind of show that, when you're playing a piano, a musician is not just hitting notes at random and the sound comes out. There's specific things they're doing. And in showing this and having them play along, or sort of, it kind of taught them what a waltz was and how to count 1, 2, 3. All these kind of concepts that she could kind of unpack and show to their kids, which is really kind of cool way to teach things. I don't know if in today's world you could get away with spending an hour every Wednesday playing the piano for your kids, but back then, yeah, absolutely, and it worked. Another example here, again from another article, she had an activity called the disc jockey today. Or the class disc jockey, where she would pick a student who got to choose, and you can see at the beginning of the year they would pick out 6 different classic works, and then every day they would you can see the gentleman or the Cub Scout, I think, here putting a record on in the back here. The designated disc jockey got to choose what song you'd hear, and so you'd have some music every day. So again, very much in the style of the way that she taught, and I think it had a real effect on the kids. And this is, you're going to remember Louise because she's the one that plays music, and you get to play on your desk. So I think it had and it seems like it was very effective at instilling some interest in the kids. It's another interesting thing here. She, around 1926, was also, this is the very end of the silent movies. I guess I should explain what this clip is from. I've talked a little bit about this in previous programs that we've done. But back in 1912, there was a motion picture that was produced in Wisconsin. Or the first in Wisconsin, it was actually in Wausau. It's called The Lumberjack. And it was sort of an attempt to try and, show Wausau to the public and kind of circulate it, kind of like an advertising thing. But after it was produced, these sort of early pictures weren't exactly the most endearing and inspiring. They didn't leave them as much of an impact. And so it just kind of sat there for a while. People forgot about it for 70 years. Well, 60, 65, 70 years, somewhere in there. And then they kind of rediscovered it in the late 70s and went, oh. And a local documentary maker, Stephen Schaller, I think it was Stephen. Mr. Schaller decided to make a documentary about it. And so, in addition to talking to people who were involved, or there were some older ladies who had actually been in the background in one of the scenes, or they knew the people or related to the people in the thing. He also thought it would be cool because it would have been a silent movie to have Louise, who had some experience, have her play score. And so this is the her kind of explaining some of this, which is kind of cool to hear. Here we go.
I found it in a day book. Otherwise, I wouldn't have known. 1926.
This is your diary?
Yes. Oh, diary notes.
Could you explain?
July.
Sorry, I'm just going to volume up here. There we go.
1926. At noon, Mildred Smith called. I can't remember who she was, probably the manager of the theater, called and wanted me to play at the movies. I consented. Enjoyed playing, I enjoyed playing for the show. It was The $1 Million Girl. The piano was good, too. I got $1.25 for playing. I worked with a violinist, and they also had an organ at this theater, but it was a small town, as I say, and it wasn't a terrific organ. But she played the violin. Then, of course, I had to play what she wanted. Then it was music and music that we had to read.
I'll get this off to California just as soon as I can.
So this is the bit where you can see there. This is where the actual film was. So this is part of the process they filmed that. So, but this is Mr. Schaller. The film ended up. The documentary was called "When You Wore a Tulip." I think there's actually like a second part of that, but it's based off of like a classic song. And one of the things that's kind of interesting is Louise kind of became the star of it. She was such a compelling figure, the way she told stories and had the music. So not only did she play and kind of explain what a silent movie and what the experience would have been like, and then play, some background for them. She kind of became the bookend, and literally, this is how the film opens.
So if the musicians rested for a bit and didn't play, then you heard the machine, and that was also lovely. It was all part of it. People weren't really fussy; they just wanted background music.
I see.
So yeah. Again, this is how they open. I will say of Mr. Scheller's, maybe it was of the time, he kind of throws in a bunch of different figures that don't really relate to the movie. There's like from here he cuts to a guy pulling a log out of a lake, and it makes sense as time goes on. It kind of like solidifies, but it could have helped with like maybe a little title card that said who they were and why you're talking to them or something. But anyway, it's a little late to give him criticism here. But yeah, she just again she just keeps cutting back to her, explaining some stuff, and yeah, I think it's kind of a testament to her at that point in time, and her just overall charisma, I guess. So later in life, as I said, she retires from teaching in 1969, sort of. She retires from fourth grade teaching. She did end up continuing she taught art class at Zion Lutheran School for about 5 years after that. And then, of course, throughout this period, and then she continues to teach piano lessons to people, and occasionally like violin and other, music stuff, but piano lessons mainly. And then she decides to give that up after December of 1988. And then she ends up passing away the following year. But over, her, talk about the legacy of a teacher like Louise Elster. She I think she estimated, let's see, get the number right here. She thought that she had probably taught, just in the fourth grade classes, 1,500 students over the time that she was teaching here. And that's a lot of people. And then when you add in all of the Sunday school and the church groups and the, ladies' aid societies and all that other stuff and music, definitely had a profound effect on the people that got a chance to meet her. I never got the chance, of course. I think she had been a really fun person to meet. Yeah. I think I'm going to end this with just as Mr. Schaller ended When You Wore a Tulip. This is the end credits. As I said, they bookend with Louise. This is how this ends, and she's going to talk a little bit about her playing the school here, which again adds a nice little touch. Gives you kind of an insight into what she did.
You can take any melody and lend it to whatever it's supposed to be. When I was teaching, I played for marching in school. The kids marched out of school. And so on. Then we had a new teacher who was strictly popular music, and she played strictly by ear and had her own stylizing. So when she played it, it was like this. So there you have its style.
You had to feel it yourself.
That's right, you
express it.
did. I just don't see how anyone could play for movies unless you did. Have to be sort of a harp in the wind, you know, that emotions swing you to play.
All right. Well, I think we'll leave it there. Again, if you have any questions, I'm going to jump over to the respective chat here in just a second. But just to let you know what's coming up next, we had teased this about, you know, here's the month-long program, and we have this secret person you should know. Now, we're kind of hoping to try to get some other people to kind of contribute. We want to leave the door open, and I think we found a better fit for that next week or next month. So instead, Gary Gisselman will be back next week, and he wants to tell you about Mildred Barber Abel. And she was, and you know, you have to find out, tune back in to find out why I'm qualifying this, but the first congresswoman, first Wisconsin congresswoman, and she's from Marathon City. So a great story there. Come on back for that for next week. Yeah. I think with that, I'm gonna, again, if you have any questions, feel free. I'm just gonna restart this so that I have a nice image there. I'm gonna go check the stuff. But even if you're, you know, don't have any questions, feel free, you know, thanks for watching. Appreciate the...
Get this off to California just as soon as I can.
So this. Huh. Okay. I seem to be. Oh, I should remove the. I was just checking in on where we were at. A little bit of a delay here. Okay. Let's see. Cool questions. Okay. Well, so Scott asked how long she taught, which I did cover, but in 1969. Okay, so some people who had her, yeah, impeccably dressed. Yeah, Nancy mentioned had her in the 50s. Yeah, that was another thing that she certainly did. You know, again, in her day books, there was always a lot of care to her clothing that she would, you know, very, very proud of that sort of, I found a great dress or, you know, that sort of stuff. So that's another aspect. That's really, really kind of cool too. And yeah, your love of classical music. Yeah, I wouldn't be surprised. I think she did a great job at, I think sometimes classical music, I guess maybe it's different these days, but classical music can be kind of hard to get people into. But I think having someone like Mrs. Elster, or Miss Elster, sorry, teaching, I think that probably helps matters a little bit. Yeah. Just gonna check the other place. Okay, yeah, and I should, yeah. So Chuck was saying here that would go down to Stevens Point, and here with the UW Symphony. Yeah, she of course she was not just here in Wausau. She, you know, such a talented musician that I'm sure she got asked to play here and there as well. Not necessarily that there's a lot of opportunities for you know, violin players in central Wisconsin, but I'm sure, you know, yeah, for sure. Cool. All right. Just going to refresh one more time here, just in case anybody sneaks a question in, but Oh, question of did she teach elementary school exclusively or other grades? I think it was just fourth grade. I think that's what she was hired for, and that's what she ended up doing, at least until she retired. But I also don't know. I didn't go year by year. I know like at some point she definitely shifted to teaching at Riverview, and so maybe there was some change there. But I think that would probably have been the late '60s. I don't know for sure, but I would imagine, having taught fourth grade for such a long time, yeah, that's probably, you know, that's probably where she what she was comfortable with and was good at. Cool. All right. Well, I think maybe we'll call it there. Thanks again. Thanks for watching. I always appreciate when there's an audience and you to share with people. And it's good to see the interest in figures like Louise Elster. As I said, next week we're going to continue wrap up our this bit on people you should know. Yeah, if you're interested in notable women in the history of Marathon County, it's going to be a good one with yeah, Mabel. But anyway, thanks again for watching. I'm gonna call it there, and we'll see you next time. Have a wonderful afternoon.